particular focus or kind of mania, certainly in the kind of the event circuit, about everything has to be new and different and exciting. You have to have kind of cross-genre and rotating worlds and image and narrative and all that kind of stuff, which is great and all, but it's still possible to do like really cool things within existing genres. And I think particularly if you're like looking to get into game development, I think it can be intimidating if you think that you don't have a sort of transformational idea, that you don't stand a chance. Whereas actually, you know, you can stick to something a bit more traditional and do something really cool with it and make a game that is genuinely really fun and can really stand out for that reason. So we have 3 developers have kindly agreed to come along and have me jabber at them. So I'm going to ask them to introduce. They're all in the Rezzed area, but guys, can you just introduce yourselves and your game to begin with?
Sure, my name is John Kearney. I'm art director and co-founder of a small indie developer called RetroFist Limited, and our game is called Firefoo, and it's out for iOS and Android.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Andrew Smith. I run Spilt Studios, and we've got a game called Tango Fiesta, which came out 3 days ago on Steam.
Hello, my name is Peter Harris, and I am with Butcher Lab, and our game is Theo and Lizzie. It will be released on Steam early next year.
So this, I guess, to start with you, like, so you're doing like a mobile game, and it's sort of a casual game, maybe? Is that what you describe
exactly.
it as?
Casual. That's the thing. I think casual is perceived by many people nowadays to almost be, especially hardcore gamers, to be a bit of a dirty word. And for us, I mean, my colleague and I, we've made our game. We've been in the industry for 17 years. We've done lots of 3D games and so forth for Sony and all that in the past. So our experience very much is hardcore. However, as we've gotten older, we have less and less time, so we made a conscious decision to make a casual game that's fun, and it is kind of based on, I would guess, Fruit Ninja. Many people would see the similarities of that. However, we have added our own slant to it, and it's got really high production values. I hope you would see that if you come over and check out the game. So for us, we've spent a lot of time, we coded our own engine from scratch, and we've put a lot of effort into creating the game. And sometimes we do feel almost a little shy, a little guilty about mentioning the fact it's a casual, fun game. But for us, you know, that's exactly what we wanted to do, and we're really proud of what we've done. So yeah, for us, casual's fine.
And with you, Andrew, with like Tango Fiesta, like which is you know, kind of fairly traditional kind of shooter structure. Like, why did you start out with that in the first instance? Like, how did you?
Well, I mean, trying to cut a long story short, I guess we were born here 2 years ago at the Rezzed Game Jam, and the theme was the 80s, and so we very purposefully sort of referenced old school games as a starting point. We built it up from there, and we looked at what we'd made in 8 hours, and it was basically kind of a joke game, but it had a certain appeal. A lot of that was to do with the kind of the humour and the nostalgia, but we realised that a lot of games nowadays have kind of left behind that sort of a design. So games like Smash TV, Gauntlet, Ikari Warriors, going even further back than that. And we felt like actually there's probably quite a lot of room still to explore in there, and as a designer I found that interesting. It's an interesting opportunity. If we did anything interesting as a result of that, it would hopefully stand out, and we just kind of ran with it from there.
Do you think there's actually a bit more room in sort of revisiting those kind of old models? Like, it feels like there are a few genres that were kind of like very big for, you know, or popular because of technological limitations back in the day, but now they've kind of fallen out of favour. But actually, you know, the industry's moved on, the new generations come in. There's actually a bit more leeway to kind of maybe go back and say, actually, you know, sort of side-scrolling beat-em-ups. Maybe there's, you know, there's an opportunity to kind of bring those back.
Absolutely, I think that part of the fault for that has to be laid at the door of the console manufacturers. The sort of 5-year cycle that you get, maybe 6, meant that every time a new machine comes out, a new bit of tech, you can kind of expand your horizons, and to compete in the market you had to do that, really. And so for like a lot of the formative years of the games industry, you would every console cycle you'd leave behind a lot of the ideas that were sort of commonplace beforehand, and then you would explore new ones. But you can't explore all the potential of all of these wonderful ideas in a 5-year time period. It's just not feasible. And so yeah, you see things like Super Metroid and Castlevania, which were quite far apart in terms of years, but they're still seen as kind of the forefathers of the Metroidvania genre, and only now are we finally getting some really, really interesting studios and ideas where they're exploring that as a genre, and that's really, really exciting.
And how about you, with your game, did you set out to kind of, like that, did you pick a genre and decide you really wanted to make something in that space, or was it something that kind of happened serendipitously?
So with us, we build a lot of prototypes between our team, and for us it was choosing something that we think, or we thought at the time that we could develop into a polished and fun game with the resources we had. I mean, whatever sort of size developer you are, whether you're just a student making your first game or a massive AAA developer, time and resources are really important. So for us as a small team and a small studio making our first game, we took something that had a glimmer of something special that we think in, and decided to develop it into something that could be released as a full game and it still would hold up against other games on other.
And do you think it's important, particularly for people kind of starting out in kind of games like 2, it's better to kind of pick something that's sort of simple and proven and kind of work with that, rather than like spend a lot of time trying to create some grand vision, or at least make the grand vision your second release?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is people out there who do the sort of grand vision thing, and that's great, but I think it's very valuable to sort of pick something that you know that you're capable of doing, especially, well, really especially when it's your first game. I think there's a lot of value in going through that cycle and releasing something. It's important. There's a lot of things that people want. So yeah,
basically.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think there should be no shame, basically, in the type of game that you choose to develop. If it inspires you as an individual, if it's something that you're creatively invested in, then even if it's similar to what's gone before, it doesn't mean that you won't make a great game. You can still make a great game. You can just, you know, if it has your personal take on it, then it will be unique regardless. So, you know, don't feel afraid to just go with what your heart says, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just add to that. I think that, you know, making games is hard, right? We all know that. It's harder than it seems, maybe. And it's a really difficult part of that is keeping up that sort of impetus and the momentum. So, like, building a game based on one that you know you love, essentially, and exploring that as an idea is the one way, hopefully, to ensure at least you still have enthusiasm for the project by the time you're kind of finishing it. And, yeah.
That's a brilliant point, yeah, because it's really important to be motivated and inspired all the way through. You know, many projects don't get finished. That's an absolute fact. So, getting to the point when you can finish your game actually is one of the biggest and best milestones as a developer that you will learn a lot from. So yeah, just finish it, and therefore choosing something that really does interest you is a good starting point to ensure that that happens.
And when you kind of, you know, when you're looking at a sort of this established kind of like genre piece, like, I mean, how do you approach it in terms of adding something to that, or at least, or, you know, putting your own stamp on it? Was it just a case of like going, oh, we're going to have a very distinctive art style?
We started with actually a really very different idea, and we took little bits from other games, and those led on to our own ideas, and things just gradually take shape. And I think, you know, you can't help but to put your own personality into it. So it kind of magically happens based on all your previous experiences and so forth.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. Just a snap. Yeah.
I mean, when, like you say, we're exactly the same. As we develop stuff, we get ideas. You know, I don't know if there's many games out there that have a design document at the start before they've built anything, and have a game at the end that matches it exactly. It's a very sort of iterative process, isn't it? Things change along the way.
Yeah. So it's better to just like start on the road and then sort of see where it ends up, rather than having a sort of super clear.
Yeah, I mean, a clear, concise game design document is very helpful, but I do believe that, you know, you have to be willing to adapt and change and explore new angles, because something that sounds great on paper, you often implement it. I don't know about you guys, but you try it and you go, blimey, that's awful. You know, it's like back to the drawing board after that. So yeah. you know, definitely be willing to drop stuff. There's a lot of wasted work along the way for every developer, and it can be pretty soul-destroying and demoralising, but you know, you've got to run with it.
Yeah. And when do you have? Is it a challenge, kind of, when like getting people to pay attention to the game when it is sort of you know, sort of a familiar format, or is it actually, or is it more of an advantage? You could just say, oh, it's like this. People go, oh, cool, you know.
Well, for us, I mean, I guess we've all got 3 very different games, but one of the strengths I find with Tango Fiesta is anyone who comes and, so like there are stages of appreciation, right, and engagement, and then someone will see a screenshot of Tango Fiesta and pretty much understand exactly like whether they're going to find it fun or not. And that's a really good thing, because we're not, well, hopefully we won't get very many bad user reviews, for example, on Steam, because people are going to come to it and we think we've delivered on what it looks like it promises, and then they'll just be happy. And it seems to be proving out on the stand. We get very few people asking where the, you know, the crafting is, or you know, why can't I just talk to the monsters and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's also a weakness in some ways, I guess. But we try and you know, be positive about it.
I was going to say, we're in a very different position, so our game doesn't translate very well with screenshots. So you see it and you think it's something different. You think, well, Theo and Lizzie, it's Theo's always running. So with a screenshot, you see a screenshot of the game, it looks like just a traditional platformer. And people don't realise what's actually going on, so it translates totally differently as soon as you play it. So in answer to what you were saying, we sometimes do have a difficulty, especially when we're talking to, say, publishers, for example, getting across the concept, and it can be hard. But shows like this for us are great, because as soon as people pick up and play it, they totally understand it. And because of the nature of the game and the simplicity of the one mechanic you have at the start, it's very easy to pick up, and within a few seconds you've got the gist of the game.
Yeah, for us, ours is a very, very simple pick-up-and-play game. It's pretty cliche to say that, and again, I almost feel embarrassed saying it, but it is, and it's pretty tricky to master as well. But shows like this are great for like user testing before release. Our game's due out next month, so we've already made some notes. But in terms of trying to stand out and market it, it is really tricky. I mean, there are only 2 developers in the team. There's myself as an artist and my colleague as a programmer. And to try and get any kind of interest is pretty tricky. We're inherently shy, as most developers kind of are. So the whole social media marketing aspect nowadays, when you're trying to get a game out there, it's kind of a necessary evil, we've found. But yeah, so I'm here today talking about it, and that's great. I'm getting my chance, so that's brilliant.
Do you think it's a problem that, particularly kind of like game development circles, that there is this kind of, or do you think there is an unseemly enthusiasm for novelty and a kind of disregard for just things being just purely entertaining? Was that not really a problem too?
I think, you know, there's a lot of market saturation with games. There's so many games, and to try and, you know, just get some interest is very, very difficult nowadays. With so many options, people have so many cool things to play, actually. But you know, there are people out there that are willing to try anything, basically, even if it looks a bit cliched, or even if it's based on old stuff. And that's cool. If we can reach a decent amount of people, we're quite confident that they'll enjoy our game. And that's the key part. It's entertaining. It's a fun game, and so yeah, for us, it's okay.
I try and be, I don't know, a bit objective about what success means, because I feel like a lot of the time success is talked about in a very broad term, but it's different for everyone, every studio. And so for me, I don't feel like, so games like Line Wobbler over in the Left Field Collection, which is absolutely fantastic, go and have a play. But it's not appealing to, like the Venn diagram doesn't really overlap, it never really would with where we're sort of targeting Tango Fiesta, and I feel like obsessing too much over how other games are presented, and the sort of like, there's a lot of celebration of really interesting ideas, and I think that's really healthy for an industry like ours right now. But I don't feel like they're any sort of danger or threat or have any real impact. You know, I don't think that if we were applying to IGF, they get picked at, and so we don't. I feel like we just have to do a better job. You know, and that's how we kind of like try and think about it. Otherwise, it could get very, very depressing and weird.
Yeah.
I haven't got much to add to that really. They've both covered it. I think what it boils down is games are a massive space. You can have, and like you say, success is classified in very, very different ways. I mean, if you're trying to be very innovative and create something that's more of an art piece, but not interested in, say, commercial success, that's a totally valid objective. Or if you're totally the opposite, and trying to make something that's solely a commercial success, I think that's fine too. But it's totally what you're after. That's probably a great example. Totally overlaps.
Well, we made a little game called Hugatron a few years back, just as a sort of a palate cleanser. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, frankly. It's a game about hugging. It's essentially Twister on a screen, and then you hug. Some people wrestled, some people fought. Most people hugged. And I mean, that was really interesting and fun for us to do. And like I say, it kind of cleared our palette from what we've been working on before. And I think maybe that's where the appeal of game jams come from and things like that. You know, you spend a lot longer usually working on your game than you expect to, and it's nice to go kind of have a breather between them. And I know a lot of the guys showing some of the more kind of crazy stuff in the collection, for example. It's a side project or something that they've sort of, it's tickled their fancy, and I think that's pretty healthy too.
Yeah, that's good. It's kind of important to do the kind of the simpler stuff, just to, for the psyche as much as anything else. And in terms of go back to sort of adding things to like you take a sort of established thing and go, right, well, how do we make this fun? Like, what, is there a process for that, or is there just a case of like where you just say, all right, well, it's going to be a twin stick shooter, but maybe do you just sit there kind of twiddling buttons until something good happens, or do you kind of go in with a specific vision for how it's going to develop?
I mean, it's kind of a weird one for us again, because when we started out with Butcher Lab, we had a bunch of different prototypes that come about in different ways. Some things were ideas that we had already formed in our heads, some things were spending an evening, exactly like you say, like twiddling knobs and seeing what happens. And so it's mixed. It totally depends on what you're making.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, as I say, the game is pretty similar to Fruit Ninja, but I can give you an example of how it differs. I mean, Fruit Ninja's sort of, I imagine many of you have played it, it's an instant swipe game in Fruit. With our game, when you swipe on the screen, it creates fire, and this fire has life, so it lingers around the screen, which creates a whole kind of new dynamic in the way that you play. There are various little evil critters in the world that you have to burn. It's all fire themed. So you have magic potions that you can use that last for X amount of time, and you get to unlock those. They're kind of boss creatures that offer high scoring potential that you can unlock as well. So it has got a lot of unique factors. When you play the game, it feels very different. But I guess, Fruit Ninja's been knocked around, at least in press previews so far, because it's a way for people to understand the basic dynamics of it. But when you do play it, it is quite different as well. So yeah, a lot of these things have evolved as we made it. I mean, the game started out with a little frog character in the middle of the screen, just catching flies and things. Now there's no character, it's all about fire. It's completely changed. So if you come over and have a look at it, you'll be able to get a sense of that.
I think the sort of creative and design process has been different at every company I've ever worked for. There's no sort of right or wrong answer, you can kind of see. With Tango, I'm just trying to think of an example because it's a useful way of doing it. So a designer's job, a friend of mine likes to say, is a designer's job is to ask the right questions, like to know which questions to ask. They don't know the answers, that's why you implement systems to then twiddle knobs and figure out what is fun. And I mean, with Tango, I tried to think of, we've got a desired sort of idea of what is fun, and that is shooting people. So what are all the fun ways that you can do that? And then you break that down into, well, okay, so if we're trying to be efficient about this, what are literally the variables that I might ever want to tweak? And inevitably you end up setting a bunch of them to 0 because they've got no effect and you don't end up with anything fun, but you still need to you need to define that sort of area in which you're going to start using hopefully our skills as designers to kind of hone in on things. And then on a more simple scale, it's a co-op game, so we did have friendly fire on just because bullets hurt people, and then we're like, this is crazy. We switched it off, but then it felt a little, it had lost something, but we knew we couldn't just switch it back on, it wasn't any good. So we came up with a sort of a half hay house where you can melee your friends and they'll drop some of their gold and they won't get hurt. So literally if we had just carried on with friendly fire and gone, there's another way of tackling this, we never would have come up with that little mechanic. And then that's led to little surprise objectives that we do that feed into the narrative, and it's just, you can't predict, but you just have to have that confidence.
Yeah, to add to that, it really is an iterative process, trying things out, exploring, and very often you just get a gut feeling when something is right, and you keep on to it, you say, can't let that go, it's great, you build on top of it, but, things can often evolve in that way.
And do you find that kind of coming to events like this is kind of a plus? Because, I don't want this to sound like I'm kind of developing mad theories about people on the internet, but it's great to come to an event and kind of get a game in front of people, and you can see them enjoying it, and you can kind of demonstrably prove that it works, and it's not just in your own head sort of thing.
It never proves that it works, it usually shows where you've broken stuff.
So true.
It's super valuable because you can see, you can easily see within probably the first half an hour of being here where you've spent the last 2 months locked in your office working on the game and totally just missed it. It's so obvious. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's something you stand back and watch with pages and pages of notes that you can take away and just start tweaking. Going back to twiddling the knobs, you can do that.
Yeah, for us this is our first show for the game, so everyone that's come to play the game, it's been in development for a year, so this has been the first time that people have actually come to play it. And so in terms of user testing, it couldn't be more valuable. Thankfully, it couldn't have gone better, to be honest. We've been really happy with the feedback. Everyone's picked up and played it, got it straight away, which has been great. We have made some notes, things that we've played and noticed, okay, we can improve on that. So yeah, it's been immensely valuable.
Well, I guess this will be my final question. If anybody has any questions from the audience, they're welcome. And if Nintendo would shut up, that would be good too. So that's actually totally by trying to fill that. I guess as a sort of parting shots, two people who are looking to kind of start on game development, kind of get their first title done. Is there any kind of methodology that you share for when people for starting with an existing genre, and what sort of mindset is helpful to have when you're developing it?
I would say that the most important thing is, as I kind of briefly alluded to earlier, is choose something that inspires you and really try to finish it. that's kind of one of the most important things, is finish it, because many start so many different projects and then just leave them. Game development's hard. Get used to hitting those brick walls quite regularly and get through them.
I'm an unapologetic Nintendo fan, so the biggest bit of advice is Miyamoto's, does it make them smile? Like every single decision that you're making in the game, does it make them smile? You could swap smile for frown if that's what you're going for, or scratch their head or whatever, but then, know what you're trying to get the player to feel, and then just every single decision that you make, frame it around that, and ship, absolutely ship your game. You just learn so much at the end.
So add to that, just keep on making stuff with the aim to ship.
Just make it. Cool, okay, well, thank you guys. Does anyone have any questions at all? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. You can play all their games are over in the Rezzed section. We have a couple of hours left of the show, so absolutely check them out. Thank you very much. Thank you.